The story opens in the quiet, dimly lit corridors of the Vance and Mercer corporate building, an aging structure with flickering fluorescent lights and the faint hum of outdated machinery. The air carries the sterile scent of cleaning chemicals, mixed with the musty undertone of old carpets and forgotten paperwork. It's just past midnight, and the only sound is the rhythmic click of hard-soled shoes against polished linoleum. Mark Ressler, a night watchman in his late 50s, moves through the empty halls with the weary familiarity of a man who has walked this route 1,000 times before. His uniform, a slightly wrinkled navy blue shirt with a faded security badge, hangs loosely on his frame, and his flashlight casts a narrow beam ahead of him, cutting through the shadows. He hums an old tune under his breath, something from his younger days, a small comfort against the oppressive silence. Every few minutes, he checks in with the front security desk via his handheld radio. His voice is calm, almost bored, as he confirms each section is secure. "West corridor clear," he mutters, pausing to jiggle a stubborn office door handle out of habit. The building's security system is a patchwork of modern and outdated tech. Some cameras are high definition, while others are grainy relics from the early 2000s. There are blind spots, places where the angles don't quite meet, where the darkness seems to linger a little too long. Mark knows them all. He takes a sip from his thermos, bitter, lukewarm coffee, and sighs. Another night, another shift. Nothing ever happens here. But tonight, the building watches back. As he rounds the corner toward the east wing, the flicker of a dying bulb catches his eye. For a fraction of a second, the hallway seems to stretch, the shadows at the far end shifting like something moving just out of sight. He hesitates, then shakes his head. Trick of the light. He steps forward, into the blind spot between cameras. And just like that, the routine is broken. The next camera down the hall remains empty. The radio sits silent. The coffee in his thermos is still warm when they find it hours later. But Mark Ressler is gone. The Vance and Mercer building exhales as midnight settles over its empty corridors. Fluorescent lights hum and sputter in their fixtures, casting uneven pools of jaundiced yellow across scuffed linoleum floors. Somewhere on the 5th floor, a dying air conditioning unit rattles like a prisoner in its vents, the sound echoing through hollow administrative hallways, where forgotten memos from 1998 still cling to bulletin boards with brittle, yellowed tape. Mark Ressler's footsteps are the only living sound in the building's carcass. He's been walking these halls for 11 years, long enough that he could trace his patrol route in his sleep, past accounting's frosted glass doors, always locked, though he tugs the handle from habit, around the corner where the carpet smells inexplicably of wet pennies, past the flickering emergency exit sign that maintenance never quite fixes. His flashlight beam bobs ahead of him, a tiny ship navigating an ocean of filing cabinets and potted plants that haven't been watered since the last recession. The radio on his hip crackles. "You alive out there, Ressler?" It's Danny at the front desk, voice tinny through the speaker. Mark thumbs the button, the plastic warm from his grip. "Unless the ghosts got me," he deadpans. It's their running joke. The old-timers swear the building's haunted, whispers in the elevator shaft, shadows that don't match the furniture. Mark doesn't believe in ghosts. He believes in bad wiring and cheaper night shift janitors. He pauses at the mouth of the East Wing hallway. This stretch is a blind spot. Camera 14 covers the entrance, but there's a 15-foot gap before camera 15 picks up again. The architects called it efficient surveillance coverage. The night crew calls it the quiet zone. Something crunches under his boot. A peppermint candy shattered into crystalline fragments. The janitors don't use these. Mark frowns, sweeping his light across the floor. A trail of them leads toward the emergency stairwell, glinting like tiny eyes in the dark. The radio hisses. Wrestler, you checking the freight elevator? Timer's beeping. Mark opens his mouth to respond when the light above him dies with a sigh. Not a flicker. A full, deliberate exhale of darkness. His flashlight gutters. Just for a second. Long enough that when the light returns, the mints are gone. The hallway stretches before him, empty. The stairwell door at the far end yawns open exactly 3 inches. The security footage plays in grainy black and white, the timestamp blinking 1:14 a.m. in the corner of the screen. The angle is high and wide, capturing the entire length of the west corridor. A sterile stretch of doors and fire extinguishers, the kind of place that only comes alive in the glow of exit signs after hours. Mark Wrestler walks into frame at his usual pace, shoulders slightly slumped from decades of night shifts. His flashlight cuts a narrow path ahead of him, sweeping lazily from side to side out of habit rather than suspicion. He pauses near the drinking fountain, the one that's been broken since summer, and gives it a half-hearted nudge with his elbow, as if this time, somehow, it might magically start working. It doesn't. The camera's mic picks up the faint sound of him humming, a tuneless, absent-minded sound, the kind a man makes when he's alone and doesn't realize he's doing it. At 1:15 a.m., he reaches the junction where the west corridor meets the east wing. He turns left, disappearing around the corner. This is where it happens. The next camera, positioned just 15 feet down the east wing, should have caught him immediately. But the footage shows nothing. No shadow, no movement, not even the faintest suggestion of a man who was, by all accounts, mid-stride. The timestamp keeps rolling. 1:16 a.m., 1:17 a.m., 1:18 a.m. The hallway remains empty. Later, when the police review the tapes, they'll notice 2 things. First, the split second before Mark steps out of frame on camera 3, the image glitches, just a flicker, like a shudder in the feed. It lasts less than a heartbeat, so quick you'd miss it if you weren't looking. But it's there. Second, in that same moment, something dark and indistinct moves along the ceiling near the corner, a shape that doesn't quite match the architecture. It could be a trick of the light, a smudge on the lens, or something else entirely. By the time anyone thinks to check, the hallway is just a hallway again, and Mark Wrestler is gone. Morning light bleeds through the lobby windows as Carl Dawson, the day shift guard, pushes through the revolving doors with a styrofoam cup of gas station coffee in hand. The building exhales stale air as the HVAC system rumbles to life. Another day, another cycle. Carl expects to find Mark at the security desk, maybe half asleep over a crossword, ready to grumble about the graveyard shift before clocking out. Instead, the chair sits empty. The radio rests on the desk, its battery light still glowing green. A half-drunk cup of coffee has gone cold beside it, the creamer congealing into a filmy skin on the surface. Mark's jacket hangs on the back of the chair, his car keys still tucked in the pocket. "Wrestler?" Carl calls out, his voice bouncing off the marble floors. No answer. He checks the logbook. Mark's last entry is from 1 a.m. Routine patrol, nothing unusual. The security monitors show all cameras operational, no alarms triggered. But when Carl flips through the feeds, he notices something odd. Camera 3 in the west corridor shows Mark turning the corner at 1:15 a.m. Camera 4 in the east wing never picks him up. Carl grabs the radio. "Wrestler, you copy?" Static hisses back at him. He retraces Mark's usual route, footsteps quickening as he moves through the silent halls. The building feels different in daylight, less ominous, but somehow more unsettling in its emptiness. When he reaches the blind spot between cameras, he finds Mark's flashlight lying on the floor. The glass is cracked, the battery's dead. Carl picks it up, turning it over in his hands. The metal is ice cold. Then he sees the mints. A handful of peppermints are scattered near the baseboard as if dropped in a hurry. One is crushed underfoot, the white candy fractured into sharp little shards. Carl radios the front desk, his voice tight. "Call the police." Somewhere in the building, a door clicks shut, but when he turns around, the hallway is empty. The fluorescent lights of the security office buzz like trapped insects as Detective Sarah Voss leans over the monitor, her reflection ghosting across the grainy footage. The air smells of stale coffee and the acrid tang of overheating electronics. Beside her, the building manager shifts his weight from foot to foot, his fingers drumming an uneven rhythm against his thigh. "Right there," Voss says, tapping the screen with a chipped fingernail. The timestamp reads 1:15:42 a.m. Mark Ressler walks into frame, his posture relaxed, his flashlight beam bobbing ahead of him like a will-o'-the-wisp. He turns the corner, and then, for a single, shuddering second, the screen distorts. The image wavers, as if the camera itself has blinked. Voss rewinds, plays it again, slower. The glitch lasts exactly 0.8 seconds, but in that sliver of time, something moves in the upper left corner of the frame, a shadow that doesn't belong. It clings to the ceiling like spilled ink, its edges indistinct, its shape impossible to define. Then the footage stabilizes, and the hallway is empty. Mark is gone. The building manager swallows hard. That's just a camera malfunction. Has to be. Voss doesn't answer. She's already pulling up the building schematics, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The blueprints unfold on the screen, a labyrinth of corridors and crawl spaces. Her eyes catch on a notation near the east wing. Sub-level access. Sealed, 1928. "What's this?" she asks. The manager frowns. "Old basement. They closed it off after the renovation. No one's been down there in decades." Voss stands, her chair scraping against the tile. "Show me." They find the door by accident. A narrow, unmarked panel hidden behind a filing cabinet in the blind spot hallway. The metal is cold to the touch, the lock rusted shut. When Voss forces it open, the hinges scream like a thing in pain. The air that rushes out is thick with the smell of damp concrete and something older, something organic. The beam of her flashlight reveals a set of stairs descending into darkness, and at the bottom, half buried in dust, lies a single peppermint candy, its wrapper brittle with age. Behind them, the security camera in the hallway swivels silently on its mount, its red light blinking once, twice before going dark. The beam of Detective Voss's flashlight cuts through the subterranean blackness like a scalpel, revealing walls of crumbling brick and pipes crusted with decades of calcified grime. Each step down the narrow staircase sends up puffs of dust that glitter in the artificial light, swirling like agitated spirits. The air is thick and stale, carrying the metallic tang of old water and something else, something faintly coppery, like dried blood. At the base of the stairs, the basement opens into a cavernous space, its ceiling lost in shadow. Voss's light skitters across broken furniture, a chair with its legs snapped off, filing cabinets with drawers yawning open like mouths frozen mid-scream. Papers litter the floor, yellowed and brittle, their ink faded to ghostly impressions. Then the beam catches something metallic. A flashlight. Identical to Mark Ressler's, down to the chip in the plastic near the battery compartment. But this one is caked in dust, its glass shattered. When Voss picks it up, the rusted metal flakes away under her fingers. The serial number is still visible, issued to Vance and Mercer Security in 1987. "Jesus," the building manager whispers. His breath fogs in the chill air. That's not possible. These were phased out 20 years ago." Voss doesn't answer. Her light has found something else. Against the far wall, barely visible behind a collapsed shelf, is a second chair, This one is intact. Frayed ropes dangle from its arms, the fibers stiff with age or something else. The floor beneath it is stained dark, the concrete pitted and uneven. And then there are the cameras. Small, discreet, mounted high in each corner of the room. Not the building's modern system. These are older, their lenses clouded with dust. But the one directly above the chair is different. Its surface gleams clean, as if recently wiped, and the tiny red light beneath the lens pulses steadily. On. Recording. The building manager stumbles back, his voice cracking. "We need to go, now." Above them, something heavy shifts in the darkness, a sound like dry leather rubbing together. Then, a whisper, not from the shadows, from the radio on Voss's hip. Mark Ressler's voice, stretched thin and warped by static. "You shouldn't have come down here." The light above them dies, and in the perfect blackness that follows, something laughs. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.